Queen Elizabeth II. From monarch to mother, wife to grandmother, discover rare insights into her life.
Winston Churchill said that the further backward you look, the further forward you can see.
She really loved taking photographs and was rather good at it.
This must have been taken by your papa.
They're very sweet little pups.
Very remarkable lady, very human.
All of a sudden I knew that the Queen had a sense of humour.
Will she go down in history as a style icon? I think so.
The Queen had dedicated her life to the service of the British people, and that is what she's done.
Uncover more unique moments with BBC iPlayer.
Good morning from BBC One. At 6 o'clock, it's time for breakfast.
Good morning. Welcome to BBC Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent. It is Monday, the 19th of September. And we're at Westminster Abbey on an historic day. A day the likes of which we haven't seen for more than 70 years.
Queen Elizabeth II, the United Kingdom's longest reigning monarch, will be laid to rest. In the next half hour, the final mourners will pass through Westminster Hall, where Her Majesty has been lying in state for over 4 days.
Later, at precisely 10:44, her coffin will be taken on a gun carriage, towed by 142 Royal Navy sailors, and make its way here to Westminster Abbey, where the state funeral service will take place at 11 o'clock.
And afterwards, thousands will line the route of a procession from here along Whitehall onto the Mall and past Buckingham Palace before making the journey in the royal hearse to Windsor, where the Queen will be buried alongside her husband, Prince Philip. Our royal correspondent Daniela Ralph looks ahead to a momentous day.
This is a previously unseen photo of the Queen, taken at Windsor in May and released by Buckingham Palace for today. She is wearing aquamarine clip brooches given to her on her 18th birthday by her father. Today the country, over which she reigned for 7 decades, says its final goodbye. It has been a week of vigils and insights into a family's private grief. We have watched a new King and Queen consort meeting the crowds who came out to greet them. Seen a new Prince and Princess of Wales take on new titles and hear people's memories of the Queen. And shared the sadness of the younger members of the royal family as they paid tribute to their beloved grandmother. And 2 of the Queen's great-grandchildren will walk behind her coffin today in Westminster Abbey. 9-year-old Prince George and 7-year-old Princess Charlotte will form part of the funeral procession. They will walk behind their parents and in front of their aunt and uncle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It will be a moment of extraordinary solemnity for these 2 young royal children. The funeral service in Westminster Abbey will include Psalm 23. The Lord's my shepherd, sung in the Abbey at the wedding of the Queen and Prince Philip. Prayers will reflect the Queen's long life and reign and her devotion to duty. The service ends with the last post, a 2-minute silence and the national anthem. Before the Queen's piper plays the traditional lament, Sleep, Dearie, Sleep.
I think we need to recollect this is a state funeral. So this really is something that is intended to be seen. It's very visual. It's also intended to be heard. I think one of the things we are trying to do is to take all that emotion, all that interest, all that care that we can see in the queue for the lying in state, that we can see in the parks where people are laying flowers, and feel that we have managed in the Abbey to provide a focus for that. We've put it into words, we've given the grief somewhere to go.
The guest list will see a congregation of prime ministers and presidents, of kings and queens, many of whom met King Charles at Buckingham Palace last night. They will attend the funeral alongside many charity workers and campaigners also invited.
I didn't expect out of the 2,000 people that were going to be this chap from Glasgow coming down to be part of it as a recipient of an MBE. It's quite an honour.
Few of us will have experienced anything like what we'll see at Westminster Abbey. The pomp, the grandeur, the scale will be memorable. But when the funeral procession moves from here to Windsor, events become smaller, more intimate, and eventually private. The committal service will be in St George's Chapel in Windsor, where the Queen worshipped so often. The Dean of Windsor will describe her calm and dignified presence in a rapidly changing and frequently troubled world. Then this evening, in a private service for the family only, the Queen will be buried alongside her husband. It will be a deeply personal ceremony. In a statement on this momentous day for the royal family, King Charles said, "As we all prepare to say our last farewell, I wanted simply to take this opportunity to say thank you to all those countless people who have been such a support and comfort to my family and myself in this time of grief." Daniela Ralph, BBC News, Westminster Abbey.
Well, we're joined now outside the Abbey by our royal correspondent, Sarah Campbell. Morning to you, Sarah. Just standing here thinking about the significance of this place to the Queen. This is where she was married, where she was crowned, and today we have this funeral which is both public but also highly personal.
It has been the backdrop to so many moments of her life. And I'm really struck this morning being here at Westminster Abbey, thinking back to what's happened over the last 11 days. So that first journey from Balmoral, the peace, the tranquility, the beauty of Balmoral, where of course she died on Thursday the 8th of September. Then that journey through the Glens to Edinburgh, the lying at rest there, allowing people in the Scottish capital to come and pay their tributes. That flight to Oriath Northolt, the journey with the State hearse through London to here, the final night at Buckingham Palace, and then the lying in state here at Westminster Hall, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to come and pay their own tributes. It has been really a momentous few days, and today will be the culmination, the moment where the world gathers here to pay tribute to Her Majesty the Queen.
We are seeing the very latest live pictures inside Westminster Hall, and the people that we are seeing filing past the coffin now, they are the last dozens of people who will have made this journey, because in around just over 20 minutes' time, those doors will close.
It has been a huge privilege over the last few days to be able to speak to some of those people who have spent many, many hours, many of them clearly physically finding it quite difficult to wait all that time. But I haven't spoken to a single person who said the wait wasn't worth it, and that it wasn't an amazing moment for them personally to be in that room with the Queen for one final time. And these are people from across the UK, from across the world, across Commonwealth countries and beyond. It really has been a part of the story, and I don't think people expected that lots of people wouldn't want to come and pay tribute to the Queen, but even so, the pictures and the number of people and the dedication, commitment they have to have done it has really been quite something.
And Sarah, later today, as well as the public, will see some of the younger members of the royal family following the coffin.
We've had to remind ourselves, haven't we, over the last few days, that this is a private family death. So looking at those pictures there, we've seen the children pay their vigil. The grandchildren mounted their own vigil on Saturday night. And this morning, today, behind the Queen's coffin, will be members of her family that we've seen, and Prince George, who's only 9, and Princess Charlotte, who's 7. And they will be in the procession immediately behind their parents. One can only imagine what must be going through their minds, but of course they are second and third in line to the throne. So they are very important in this process, and it was clearly felt that they should be a part of this historic day too.
Indeed. Sarah, for now, thank you very much indeed, Sarah Campbell.
Well, as we have just been saying, over the last few days, haven't we seen so many thousands of people filing past the Queen's coffin at Westminster Hall? And now, as we've been saying, the last remaining members of the public who are still in the queue are preparing to pay their respects before Her Majesty's lying in state comes to an end in the next 20 minutes or so.
And we can now go to John Maguire, who's outside Westminster Hall with us this morning, with some of those people who've waited for many, many hours. Good morning, John.
Yeah, morning to you, John. For the first time in 5 days, Victoria Tower Gardens is now empty. The final people on the queue have gone through. Those yellow, bright yellow high-vis tabards you can see just behind us there are the stewards who have just given themselves a round of applause for a job well done, because everybody has now moved through. The final few people will just have their security checks, go through the airport scanners and then enter into Westminster Hall. The thing they'll be struck by is just how quiet it is, because there was a good atmosphere, as we've been saying all along, in the queue this morning. Some people singing. One of the stewards was even doing a pub quiz for people coming through. But as they go into the hall, a very, very solemn atmosphere, carpet across the stone floor to deaden the sound. Each person having their own moment of reflection. I'm struck, having done it myself, but also seeing the pictures, just how everybody's response is very, very different. And that's what we heard over the last 10, 11 days or so, isn't it? The fact that people have their own different reasons for paying tribute to Her Majesty the Queen, and they are deeply personal reasons. The hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who've come through here to see Her late Majesty lying in state will have been in the mind of the new King when he made that statement last night that Daniela was telling us about. He said, in London, Edinburgh, Hillsborough and Cardiff, we were moved beyond measure by everyone who took the trouble to come and pay their respects to the lifelong service of my dear mother, the late Queen. So everybody's show of support really has been realised, been accepted by members of the royal family. Indeed, I saw the King and the Queen Consort drive up the Mall last night and waved to all of the people that had camped out, some of them for more than one night, to make sure that they got their front row seats. I spent a little time with them last night to find out exactly about their preparations and again for their reasons for wanting to come to today's funeral. With the sun setting behind Buckingham Palace, those who secured a front row seat prepared for a night in the open. So what do we got here then? Hot chocolate?
Yeah, I'm being a good girl. I've got highlights.
It's Julie's second night on the Mall. She wasn't taking any chances.
I want to see the Queen go up the Mall for the last time and past Buckingham Palace for her final journey on towards Windsor to be with Prince Philip. And that means a big deal to me.
Some depended on little more than a candle to keep them warm. Others relied on years of military experience.
I had what we call a basher, like a bivvy. Yeah. So we set that up between the two tents, stop the rain. They got a bit of cardboard. So yeah, we sorted out there. So I've got an air bed, got 2 gas stoves, got all my food. It's obviously going to be a sad day for everyone, but especially for the military. We knew Her Majesty is the boss. And there's flags there, goodbye to the boss, and that's how we know Her Majesty.
And there was some trial and error.
Oh, no, we're not going back. Yes, we are. Yay! There you go, see? Just like that.
Wonderful.
See, I'm going to stay dry and keep that damp off me tonight.
This impromptu campsite was given the royal seal of approval with a wave from the passing King and Queen Consort.
It's all high spirits now, and everyone's very friendly, wanting to talk. But I think tomorrow the tone will be completely different, which is to be expected, isn't it, really? But it's nice now. There's a sense of unity with everyone.
There was a change in the atmosphere as the crowd observed a minute's silence for their late Queen. The only sound came from the hum of generators powering the floodlights. As is the way with queues and crowds these days, new friendships are being forged as people from Durham and from Taunton find themselves side by side.
Ever since we found out that she was poorly and died, we had this uneasy feeling and just felt as if we just had to do something. So, just had to come down.
I do a lot of outdoor swimming, so I've got one of those dry robes just to step into as a sleeping bag later tonight. So other than that, I think that and probably a 3 o'clock in the morning sing-song.
As with the lying in state, the fun and the buzz generated by people coming together will make way for solemnity as the funeral procession passes here later today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Strangers that have become friends, all here to pay their final respects and with one thing in common, bidding farewell to their Queen.
Good night.
Well, I'm delighted to say that we have a couple of guests of today's funeral. Leslie Garvin from Blind Veterans UK and Sian Chow from Proud Voices UK, both deserving recipients of the MBE. Congratulations to you both for that, and therefore that's one of the reasons why you're invited along today. Leslie, first tell us a little bit about the organisation.
Good morning. Yes, the organisation, it's Blind Veterans UK. We're a national charity. We support blind veterans, anybody who served in the armed forces who are registered blind. Our patron, Queen Elizabeth, up to 2016, she became our patron when she became Queen in 1952. So we're very honoured today to come to this incredible celebration of life, but also really a deep affection for Her Majesty. Blind Veterans UK support, as I said, blind veterans.
Yep.
We have rehabilitation centres, we're in the community, we're everywhere.
So obviously doing fantastic work.
Absolutely.
Tell us about receiving the invitation to today.
I was completely shocked, to be perfectly honest with you. I was driving, I was in the car, I got a telephone call from the Cabinet Office, and I was completely blown away. The gentleman said, you've been a recent recipient of the MBE, would you like to come to the Queen's funeral? Well, what an honour, what an absolute honour, and for me, my family, and for the organisation. Even just getting here this morning was a bit of a trial, so very, very honoured.
Well done. And Sian, your organisation, Proud Voices UK, tell us a little bit about that and why you received the MBE and indeed why you're here today.
Sure. Proud Voices UK is a network of LGBT choirs in the UK and Ireland. We're basically really passionate about music and choral performance, and the choirs in all parts of the UK are there to sort of build community, talk about their lives, and use music as a means of reaching out to other people, talking about communities that have traditionally been relatively marginalised. We organise festivals, music festivals across the country, and we have a network where we share information about education. We support new choirs that are forming, and that's basically our raison d'etre.
Yeah, and again to you really, how did you find out about your invitation today?
Very much like Leslie, I was in the car at the time. We were pulling up into the car park and I received a phone call. They rang several times. It was one of those withheld numbers, so didn't really want to respond to it immediately. But it was the Cabinet Office. They invited me, and exactly like Leslie, they said, you're a recent recipient of the MBE. We wish you to be represented there. And I'm absolutely flattered. What a privilege it is to be here today. What an absolute honour. And I've been reflecting over the last couple of days of why me? But I recognise that it is because the Queen, I'm sure, would have wanted to have all different communities represented here at this event, and we are here to be there for the LGBT community as well as the choral community.
And Leslie, you're representing your organisation, aren't you? The charity, those people you help. You're here as their sort of figurehead, really.
Yes. Yeah. I have to say, before I came here today, I did say to some of our blind veterans, and we have a centre in Brighton, and they live in our centre down there. We have 22. A number of them have talked to me about how they feel about the Queen, how, of course, all veterans have sworn allegiance to Her Majesty and the Crown. I've had messages saying, please think of us when you're in the Abbey.
Right.
I met the Queen in Saudi Arabia. I was on D-Day. I served under her father, her uncle, and also the Queen. And very, very, the reverence that they hold, that veterans hold, has really had a profound effect on me as well. So I feel as if I'm coming not only for myself and my family, but for this amazing organisation.
Good for you, and it's the same for you, Leslie. I suppose I beg your pardon, Sian. You're representing the people that sing in your choirs.
Yes, absolutely. And we're a really diverse group of people from metropolitan centres, but also rural areas across the whole of the UK and Ireland. And it is really a privilege to be able to be here on behalf of those people.
Well done. Okay, well, thank you both very much indeed for talking to us on BBC Breakfast this morning. It will be, I think, obviously for Leslie and Cian and for the 2,000 others that will be in Westminster Abbey later on this morning, an incredibly moving and incredibly poignant service, but one that will perhaps have the chance to celebrate Her Majesty's life, to celebrate her incredible 70 years of duty and service, not only to those people who will be at the Abbey today, but to all of us. Back to you two.
John, thank you very much indeed. The scene outside Westminster Hall there, so different than it has been over the last 4 days or so, where we've seen so many people queuing there, and focus switching from there to here, to Westminster Abbey, over the following hours.
Yeah, and a lot of the people who've been through Westminster Hall are now gathering on the route here, and following the service later this morning, the Queen's coffin will be drawn in a walking procession from the Abbey here to Wellington Arch before embarking on its final journey to Windsor Castle.
Now, during the procession, Her Majesty's coffin will pass the cenotaph in Whitehall. Our correspondent Nick Beak is there for us this morning. And Nick, I know we are expecting lots of crowds where you are today.
Good morning, Sally. Good morning, John. Yes, just look at this. Hundreds of people already on Whitehall. They've camped out overnight. It's been cold in the last few hours, but that hasn't deterred people. Look, on both sides of this famous street, they are waiting. The United Kingdom hasn't seen a state funeral since 1965. That, of course, the funeral of Sir Winston Churchill, the occupant of that street there, Downing Street. And just remember, during her long reign, the Queen had 15 different prime ministers. And if you think about it, all along this route of what will be her final journey, there are symbols of that long reign. You might be able to make out there, just in the darkness, the cenotaph. Of course, it's the symbol of the war dead, and the Queen, for so many people, represented that generation. She was a living link to those people in the Second World War. Of course, she was famously a mechanic for a short time, and she made her first broadcast back in 1940 as a teenager, when she addressed the children of the Commonwealth, telling them not to be afraid, that better times would come. You can see everyone who's out here this morning. There is a hush, just as I say that, someone is waving, but there is, I think, a different atmosphere compared with the last few days or so. I want to introduce you to two gents who I've met this morning. It's very good to speak to you. Dave and Gareth, can you just explain, you're both Army veterans, and for you this is a significant moment being here today.
Yeah, so I mean, I served for just under 20 years, swore my oath of allegiance to the Queen, and you know, I was very lucky to meet her in my last year in the Army, and you know, it's a day that, you know, I had to be here for.
And Dave, you served Queen and Country. You were seriously injured in Afghanistan back in 2010.
Yeah, I was blown up in 2010 in Afghanistan, which ended up me having quite a severe spinal injury, and I was medically discharged in 2019 because of my injury.
6 years after your injury, you met the Queen. What was that like?
It was amazing. I've heard it all week about how she makes you feel, you know, kind of at ease, and it sounds daft, but it was just like talking to your gran. She was a really lovely lady to be with, but such a massive presence.
And Gareth, I know you actually met the Queen when you were not serving, when you were at primary school.
Yes, I had the privilege of meeting her when I was approximately 7 years old, when she came to South Wales in Swansea to open a stadium, an athletic stadium, so that was nice. And again, like Dave said, when I joined at 16 years old, I joined to serve my Queen and Country, and I had the privilege of doing that for almost 10 years. And it is a sad day. She was our Colonel-in-Chief, she was our boss, and I don't think we both decided when the news broke there was no other place we'd want to be today than
We've
here
not
this
seen
morning.
each other for 21 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen. 21 years, so this is a momentous occasion. These two veterans back together after all that time, and these are the sort of stories we're hearing from so many people this morning. They say they simply can't miss this moment of history.
Nick, thanks very much indeed. Welcome back to Westminster Abbey, and you might be able to hear behind us a few bangs and crashes. Obviously, final preparations still taking place. The streets here this morning have been busy, haven't they? But very, very calm. Everybody going about their work, making sure that this afternoon the whole place is immaculate.
Indeed, security being put in place. There's a large security cordon. Obviously, leaders of countries around the world will be here. But from the moment, this is the view inside Westminster Hall. It's a scene we've become so familiar with over the last 4 days and nights, isn't it? As the Queen has lay in state there.
And here's the moment they're changing the guard. At 24, almost 25 minutes past 6, as the last few people will be able to file past the coffin. After many thousands have done so over several days, these are the last people who will be able to do so.
And these people have waited, like so many more over the last few days, for 10, 12 hours, waiting in line, making new friends, sharing memories, and now silently paying tribute to Her Majesty.
We're joined here at Westminster Abbey by our royal correspondent, Sarah Campbell. And Sarah, Westminster Hall has been the scene of some incredible moments, images over the last few days.
It really has been, I think, an unexpected moment for so many days. I just was watching the changing of the guard there, and I think it's worth as well talking about all the people that have filed past. But you watch the changing of the guard, the movements are so precise, so practiced, and you can feel the weight of responsibility that all those members of the armed forces feel, that they want to do their Commander-in-Chief justice. And you've seen that here over the last 4 days. We'll watch it here at the Abbey later in the procession from the hall here to the Abbey. And as you say, here in Westminster Hall, it has been incredible over the last 4 days. Of course, key moments you'd have to pick out. The vigil mounted by first the children, King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, on Friday for 15 minutes, just stood silently, heads bowed. And then on Saturday, the 8 grandchildren of the Queen, the youngest Viscount Seven, just 14 years old, the son of the Earl and Countess of Wessex. But yes, the 8 grandchildren, of course, Prince William at the head, Prince Harry at the foot of the coffin, both in military uniform. Again, that was a real moment. And again, this feeling that this is the public paying tribute, but this is also a very private time for the family members.
People taking their time, pausing and reflecting, and witnessing this moment in history. It's been really interesting talking to people in the queue here on breakfast over the last few days as they waited to get inside Westminster Hall, and then again as they left. People from all walks of life, people with all connections and none, and people from all over the world, Sarah. This has been the focus.
And people I've spoken to have surprised themselves by, they wouldn't necessarily have said that they would have travelled however long to get here and then spend 12 hours in a queue, but they have just felt that that is what they wanted to do. And I think in all the statements we've heard from members of the royal family over the past 11 days, this acknowledgement and this outpouring of grief and tributes to their mother, their grandmother, has been really appreciated by members of the royal family. The King last night He said, as we all prepare to say our last farewell, I wanted simply to take this opportunity to say thank you to those countless people who've been such a support and comfort to my family and myself in this time of grief.
And as we see the last few people walk through, it's the reactions of people as they leave that has been so striking, hasn't it, Sarah?
Many of them turn around again, not wanting to leave. Many of them are crying. Children, you rarely hear, you can watch it for a long time and you won't hear a sound other than at the changing of the guard. So even the smallest of children seem to recognise the atmosphere of the place, the tranquility, the stillness. It's really quite incredible.
We've seen some young children going through just in the last few seconds, haven't we? Some in prams and pushchairs who've been up all night. Quite a challenge for parents and grandparents who've brought them.
But when you speak to those parents and grandparents and ask, your child won't understand this, they will say yes, but in years to come, they will say, I was there. And even though they will only know a king throughout their lifetime, they will have been there at this key moment for the Queen, who was such a part of all our lives for so many years.
It's interesting though, I was talking to some kids in the queue yesterday, and they were fully aware of this moment because the Platinum Jubilee was so recently and so many children were involved in that, and Paddington of course, and they put up bunting and they wore t-shirts, and for that reason they have a connection with the Queen, and a lot of them have felt this very keenly, haven't they?
Absolutely. My children are constantly throwing facts to me about the Queen that they've learned at school, and the book that each primary school child was given during the Platinum Jubilee to give them an understanding of this extraordinary reign, which sadly would only last another 3 months. But how lovely it was to have had that 4 days in June of such celebration, and for the Queen to have been aware of quite the status she had in people's lives.
Now officially, those doors will have closed at 6:30. It's now 6:31, but the images that we're showing you are on a slight delay. So it's possible, probable, that the people we're seeing now are the very last people to file through.
Now the parliamentary officials, the people who look after the Palace of Westminster, those who keep it secure and safe, will say their farewells, led by Sarah Clark, who has the title Black Rod.
These images tell you that it's over. The lying in state is now over.
4 days, 4 nights, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world have filed past that coffin in that extraordinary space within the Palace of Westminster.
Striking images there, Sarah, of the last few moments of the lying in state, closed by Black Rod.
It's quite a moment, isn't it? It really is in a week, 10 days that have had so many powerful moments. On Wednesday, we saw the family hand the Queen over to the nation in that procession from Buckingham Palace, her last night in Buckingham Palace, arriving here at Westminster Hall. And that really has been the moment for the nation to come and to pay their own personal tributes. And haven't they done so in so many numbers? And then later today, the first state funeral that this country has seen for so many years. And the Queen, the final movements from here, Westminster Abbey, the procession to Windsor, and then her final resting place in the George VI Memorial Chapel, alongside, of course, Prince Philip and her family, her parents and her sister.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed.
It's 34 minutes past 6. You're watching BBC Breakfast, and despite the activity of the security cordon here, there's a kind of calm and peace on the streets of central London this morning, as well as the peace that we've seen within Westminster Hall.
And later on, the Queen will make her final journey through London, and then later to Windsor, where she will be laid to rest alongside her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, as Sarah was telling us.
Let's just have a look now at the route that procession will take. The Queen's coffin will be carried by the Royal Navy's state gun carriage from Westminster Hall in a procession including the King and his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, via Parliament Square to the west gate of Westminster Abbey. Then at 11 o'clock, the Queen's funeral will begin. And at the end of that service, 2 minutes silence will be observed across the country. Then the procession heads from the Abbey, up the Mall, past Buckingham Palace, and along Constitution Hill to Hyde Park Corner and Wellington Arch, where the coffin will be transferred to the State Hearse for the drive to Windsor. Up the long walk to Windsor Castle, and then to St George's Chapel for another service at 4 o'clock this afternoon. There's then a private ceremony where the Queen's coffin will be laid to rest, alongside that of Prince Philip.
Well, let's go live now to the location where this journey will end. Charlie is in Windsor for us this morning. Morning, Charlie.
Good morning to you, Sally. As you said, this very much the final part of the journey to the Queen's final resting place. You can probably see behind me here the outline of Windsor Castle itself, just getting light here, and they are expecting some 150,000 people to line this historic route here, and it will be an occasion and a spectacle that has not been seen for so long. Let's speak to Helena Wilkinson, who's with us this morning. Morning to you, Helena.
Morning, Charlie.
Just give us a sense of what will happen here from around 3:10 this afternoon.
Yes, so we are going to see the State Hearse slowly come along the long walk here, the historic long walk. It's a place that the Queen loved to be in. She learnt to ride horses here, and it'll make its way up to the castle just behind you and enter into the grounds to St George's Chapel. There will be a committal service which will begin at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and it'll be a smaller, more personal service compared to the funeral in London. Members of the royal family, of course, but also royal household staff, and for them it will be a very difficult day. They've worked with the Queen for years. During the service there will be traditions that will symbolise the end of the Queen's reign. One of those will be the crown jeweller, who will remove the crown and the orb and sceptre from the coffin, and that will symbolise the separation of the Queen from her crown. We will also hear later in the service, as the Queen is lowered into the royal vault, the Sovereign's piper will play before a blessing and then singing of God Save the Queen. And we know from the palace that that was something that the Queen personally requested. That'll end the service, the committal service, at 4:45, and then there will be a private service at 7:30 this evening. No cameras will be there. That'll be just for members of the royal family, when the Queen will be buried inside a smaller chapel within St George's Chapel next to her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yes, and the royal family will meet here at Windsor Castle as the hearse progresses up the long walk.
Yes, that's right. So as the hearse comes along the long walk where we're standing here, it'll be lined with
hundreds and hundreds of military personnel and tens of thousands of people as well. Members of the royal family, the King and other members, they will be in the quadrangle within the grounds of Windsor Castle, and that is where they will be waiting for the state hearse to arrive.
Helen, thank you very much. If we turn this way, we're going to talk to one or two of the people who have been waiting here. We have 3 generations here. First of all, Kathy, who's come all the way from Australia.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Tell us a little bit about your journey here and why you wanted to be here today on the day of the Queen's funeral.
I left Australia on Tuesday and got here Wednesday night, and I went to the vigil on Thursday night and spent 10 hours in the queue. I've always loved the Queen and I just had to be here. I've always said that I had a slush fund to come to see be here for the funeral. I came for Meghan and Harry's wedding, and so I just have to be here because she's just been an amazing woman for everybody in the world. Yeah.
Now we have 3 generations of one family here. Very good morning to you. Tell us your names.
It's Debbie.
Debbie.
Maureen.
And Maureen. And with you, your daughter?
Maisie.
Tracy.
Maisie.
So, Maisie, I'm sorry, Maisie. Now, Maisie has just woken up just a few moments ago, and I think maybe we can see where Maisie's been sleeping tonight. Tell us why it was so important to be here to see this final journey.
To bring her home, to bring her back to Windsor on her final journey, and to say goodbye. Yeah. Just
Maureen?
to say goodbye. Yeah.
What memories do you have over the years?
Well, she's been on the throne for 70 years, and I'm 70 this year, so that's all I've ever known is the Queen. And we've always used to come to Windsor. Buckingham Palace we went to a few weeks ago, so yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the overnight, because you've literally slept here through the night.
Yeah, so we was here about 9:30, 10 o'clock last night, and yeah, I've got a couple of hours in. She slept all night.
It's a big yawn there.
Just waking up.
Tell us, how's it been for you so far? And what are you expecting to see today? What's Mum told you?
She wants to see the hearse with the coffin, don't you? Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a remarkable thing, and there's 3 generations here all together. You have a fantastic location. You'll see everything. Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll see the King.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So let's just move down the line. We have Susie and Laura here. Very good morning to you as well. Tell us a little bit about why you chose to come today.
So I'm local, so I'm very proud to live in the borough, but I wasn't able to get to London this week because of work, so I feel it's really important that I'm here to see the Queen come home to Windsor Castle, and yeah, I couldn't have missed it. I just want to know that I want to see her go back into the castle.
Well, we can tell it as you're speaking, the emotions already, and you know, 3:10, we understand the procession will start past where you are now. It feels very personal for a lot of people.
I think it does, and I actually think when we see the service and the music starts and all the people who've contributed to what's going to happen today, but also to know that actually she planned it, and you know, I am local, and they released the route the other day where so many more people are going to get the opportunity to see her, and I just it's really important to be here, and actually it's about being with all these other people that we're meeting today.
Laura, you've got your family has quite a personal connection, don't they? Tell us what that is.
My father, who is no longer with us, he guarded the Queen in the 1970s at the castle, so that was quite an honour, and we lived in Windsor for most of our lives. I moved away to Ilfracombe, and my mother's quite poorly, and unfortunately she couldn't come, so I'm doing this for my mother, sorry, and my late father, and I just wanted to say goodbye. I'm sorry.
No, you don't need to apologise. I think people will understand. I know you spoke to me before, and you have pictures of your late father.
I do, yeah. I haven't got them with me, unfortunately, because I just hold the memories.
Because this place would have been so important to him.
Very much so, yeah. He would love to have been here, and my mum would love to have been here. If I could have got her here in a wheelchair, I would have done, but she's too poorly. So, yeah, I'm here for them and me, because I've got huge memories of being here in all the jubilees and everything, and it was just a marvellous time. And I've never met the Queen personally, but I've seen her many times, and she's an inspiration to me. Wish I could be more like her and not do this.
Well, look, we really appreciate you talking to us this morning. Stay warm.
I will.
Because we've got a few hours to go. Thank you very much.
We only met in the queue.
John, Sally, you probably get a sense of the atmosphere here. They are expecting, as I say, some 150,000 people to line this route. Windsor Castle just emerging from the darkness this morning. And back to you now.
Charlie, thank you very much. At 6:44 you can just see the light rising across Windsor now.
Isn't that spectacular?
Over Buckingham Palace, looking down the Mall. Beautiful sky over London this morning.
And many thousands more people will wait there along the Mall this morning. Some have been camping out for several days and nights already. And here at Westminster Abbey, members of the public not able to get as close. There's a big security sweep going on right now to lock down the Abbey ahead of that funeral service, which begins on the dot of 11 o'clock this morning. We heard from some veterans, didn't we, a little bit earlier, who are waiting at the cenotaph to watch the procession later. And around 6,000 current serving members of the armed forces will be involved in the procession, both in London and in Windsor today. And many of them have been taking part in rehearsals overnight.
Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale is at Wellington Barracks for us this morning. Jonathan, I know you've been there several days now and preparations well underway for the day that is so important to get absolutely right.
Yeah, Sally, I mean, the parade ground looks pretty empty behind me, but I can tell you it is a hive of activity, putting on their ceremonial uniforms, getting ready for this massive occasion for military personnel. As you say, thousands involved in both the funeral and also the procession that takes place after that funeral. And the focus will really be that state gun carriage that will be pulled by members of the Royal Navy, 142 ratings, and I'm joined now by two of those who will be pulling that carriage. I think one of you in the front and one of you behind. Jessica Rose King, you are in the front pulling that carriage, and then Joseph McConaughey Turner, you are behind. First of all, just tell me, you know, you haven't, this isn't something you normally do, it's not your job, but you have been practicing. It's a heavy carriage, it's full of symbolism because it was first used for Queen Victoria. Just tell us what you've been doing over the past week.
Well, probably over the past 9 days or so, we've carried out numerous hours of training, focused on obviously certain drills in regards to manoeuvring the gun carriage because it is quite heavy at 2.5 ton. So this sort of training has been very much special.
And Joseph, you all volunteered for this?
Yeah, I volunteered because, I mean, it's an incredible thing to be here, to be part of. It's such an honour to be here anyway. Honestly, it's amazing.
Just tell us, for you, it's perhaps more significant than for lots of other people because you have some ties to this. Just tell us a bit about that.
So my grandfather happened to actually be part of the gun carriage crew that pulled King George VI. So unfortunately I didn't get to meet him because he passed before I was born, but I think more so that makes it even more special because now I have that connection, and it's just an honour to be here anyway, but also to kind of walk in the same footsteps that he did is amazing.
Now, it was just done by male ratings. It is being done now with women as well. I mean, you know, given that the Queen was the first member of the royal family to serve in the armed forces, Jessica, you're a woman now pulling that gun carriage along with 142 ratings. Just for you, how important is this, do you think, significant?
The significance is enormous. I probably couldn't actually describe it in words to you. I feel incredibly fortunate to be one of the 14 females that are now pulling that gun carriage with the height restrictions gone, and to be honest, it's going to be one final duty to Her Majesty the Queen that I will take very much pride in doing.
Jessica and Joseph, thank you very much for speaking to us. As we say, they will be pulling that gun carriage, 2.5 ton gun carriage, that will carry the coffin of the Queen to Westminster Abbey from the Palace of Westminster, and then also after for that procession that will take place up the Mall to Wellington Arch, which will then see the coffin put onto a hearse and taken to Windsor Castle. Now back to you.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. That's Jonathan Beale live at Wellington Barracks for us this morning.
It is a beautiful morning here in central London. The Abbey, Buckingham Palace, lit up by the sunrise in the last few moments. It is still, it is calm. It's going to be a difficult day for lots of people across the UK and around the world. But this makes it slightly more bearable, doesn't it? The fact that it's not pouring with rain, it's not dark skies, it's looking beautiful, London, today.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous, just coming up to 10 to 7 this morning. It also looked glorious yesterday evening, didn't it? We've seen some beautiful images over the last several days.
This
Look
was
at this.
amazing, wasn't it? This is last night, just as the sun was setting in central London. This gorgeous rainbow just arched across Westminster Abbey there in the foreground and right over the Palace of Westminster, where the Queen was still lying in state. Remarkable picture.
Now, as we have been telling you, thousands of people are expected to gather through central London today, lining the procession route the Queen's coffin will be taking.
Yeah, Charlotte Gallagher is at the Mall for us this morning, talking to some of those people who are waiting. Good morning, Charlotte. I know some of them have been there all night and all day yesterday.
Yes, John, people turned up from days previously. In fact, I saw someone who got here on Wednesday. She wanted to be part of this so much. And the mood here today is very still, very silent. It feels different than other days. People really taking in what's going to happen today. And you talked about the sunrise, and when it happened here, Buckingham Palace almost looked this magical kind of pink colour. It really, really was special. Let's talk to some of the people here today. We've got this lovely family, Nicola, Louise and Michael, and Linda, who they met in the queue. How are you feeling?
Excited, sad obviously, but also very excited. This is a monumental occasion and we wanted to be a part of it and part of the history of our country.
Because she did so much, didn't she, the Queen? All of us will have different memories, times we saw her perhaps in real life or on the television, coming out onto the balcony behind us and smiling and waving.
Yeah, I mean, she was just such a big part of our heritage and our lifestyle, and it's all we've ever known, and we just wanted to pay our respects to her for the great job she's done for our country.
And you got here yesterday afternoon, but you were determined to be part of history, be part of this, and
absolutely.
say goodbye.
Yeah, we came up around, we arrived around 4 p.m. yesterday evening, and then Linda arrived shortly after. I think we felt as a family that we had to come and pay our respects and as our flag says, say thank you. You know, and I think that means a lot.
And Dad, Michael, you wanted to come as well for your wife. Your wife's at home, but she's watching the day on television.
Hopefully she's watching it, and yes, but it's going to be a very emotional day, and there's going to be a little tear in my eye when she goes past.
Linda, how are you feeling?
Emotional, excited. I'm just really glad to be here.
You came down from the Midlands yesterday, didn't you? And
yes, it was a last minute decision to come. Yeah.
What did the Queen mean to you?
Just everything, really. She was just a steadfast, you just feel safe when she was here. It was just a lovely, lovely lady. And my mum loved her.
You know, lots of people have been telling me how much the Queen reminded them of their mum, of their grandma.
She did, she did actually remind me of my mum. She got the same smile.
That generation that lived through so much and saw so much.
Yeah, it was lovely.
And it's lovely for you as well. You've made friends in the queue.
Oh yes, I came alone, and then I said, "Can I come and sit by you?" And they adopted me for the night.
And it's been a pleasure. Yeah, it really has been a pleasure.
Yeah, and that's been really lovely.
Everybody's just been really friendly, and they want to enjoy the occasion. Yes, it's sad and it's emotional, but you want to meet people, you want to talk to people, and that's the enjoyment of it.
You also want to celebrate the Queen's
life.
life.
Absolutely.
What a life she had.
I mean, on the throne for 70 years, probably we won't see anything like that again, you know, and we want to celebrate her and what she achieved. So that's why we're here.
And Michael, what are your favourite memories of the Queen?
I can remember when I was a little boy, I was at her coronation.
Oh, were you?
Yes, and 70 years and I'm here, and her passing away. 7 decades, fantastic achievement.
And you never would have thought when you were there as a child that she would have been on that throne for so long?
Absolutely not, but we're very privileged to have had her.
We are
Very
indeed.
privileged.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thousands and thousands more people coming down here. I'm sure I saw people arriving with their chairs from 4-5 o'clock this morning. They want to be part of this day, say thank you to the Queen and say goodbye.
Charlotte from the Mall, thank you very much indeed. Look at that, doesn't it look beautiful this morning?
Stunning, absolutely stunning. London looks gorgeous ahead of this day. And wasn't it lovely to see some smiles there in the crowd? People celebrating a great life, well lived, as well as mourning that loss today.
I know a very, very solemn day ahead, but as you say, the atmosphere in the crowds that have gathered over the last few days has been incredible. I know you've been in the queue, haven't you, and meeting people there. It's all been part of the experience.
And every single person, I think, just got a sense of it there with Charlotte. Every person has their own very personal reason and a different reason for coming. A family connection, a memory of the coronation. Just every single person has a story and a reason for being here. And for you watching this morning, a reason for joining us over the TV as well.
And at 5 minutes to 7, I can tell you it is a beautiful morning here in London. Skies are simply glorious. This is the live shot where we are this morning at Westminster Abbey. Of course, the focus of much of today's events.
Westminster Abbey, where Queen Elizabeth was married as a young woman, where she was then crowned in 1953, and today where her family and dignitaries and leaders from around the world will gather to say farewell to her ahead of that second service then this afternoon at Windsor Castle.
Yes, Windsor, where the journey ends. We will be live in Windsor in the next half hour here on the programme, but for now, for viewers in the UK, it's time to get the news, the travel and the weather where you are.
Good morning from BBC London. I'm Thomas McGill. More than 10,000 police officers from every force across the UK will be deployed in London later for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. With hundreds of world leaders, dignitaries and royalty attending the funeral, as well as an estimated 1 million spectators, it's one of the biggest operations in the capital for decades. Around 2,300 officers will line the route of the Queen's final journey from Westminster Abbey to Windsor Castle in what the Met has described as the final and most complex phase of the operation following the Queen's death.
It is a hugely complex and challenging day for policing. We're expecting a huge number of crowds. And my ask of those who are coming to London is follow the guidance and the advice on the government's website. But when you are here, officers will be engaging and talking to you. I'd ask everybody to keep vigilant, to stay vigilant. And if you see or hear anything that's out of the ordinary, please speak to one of the many officers who will be on duty.
Well, today's events will also mean the capital's transport network could face its busiest day ever, with bosses warning it could be overwhelmed if too many people start to head home once the procession leaves Westminster. With more on that, here's our transport correspondent, Tom Edwards.
Central London is expecting unprecedented numbers today. There will be lots and lots of road closures. Also, the tube is going to run an hour later, although St James's Park, Hyde Park Corner and Westminster are not going to be open. Also, Green Park is going to be exit only. What TfL are worried about is there will be a huge rush of people after the funeral and they'll all rush to the tubes and that will cause problems. They're asking people to stagger their journeys, but it is a big day for Transport for London.
Well, as Tom mentioned, their roads will be very busy and many closed in central London for much of the day. In West London, the A4 and A30 are likely to be closed too. Transport bosses are advising owners of cars parked on those streets to move them before 10 o'clock this morning, as crowds are expected as the Queen's coffin makes its final journey to Windsor. Well, let's take a look at the Tube and see how it's running at this time of the morning. And there's a good service on all lines at the moment, a little part suspension on the Elizabeth line. And the weather, Elizabeth Rizzini has that.
Hello there, good morning. With more cloud around last night, then it is a milder start to the day than we saw over the weekend. Some of our temperatures in double figures. Now for Her Majesty's State funeral today, then it should stay dry or mostly dry, but there will be a lot more cloud around than we saw over the weekend, and there may just be a few splits and spots of drizzle just from the thickness of the cloud, really nothing more than that towards the end of the day in central London and also perhaps in Windsor too. Top temperatures of 17 or 18 degrees Celsius for most of us, some brighter spells peeping through the cloud at times. Now, as we head through this evening and overnight, then there'll always be a lot of cloud around. Again, it should stay mild. Temperatures, for the most part, will stay in double figures. For the rest of the week, then we are expecting it to stay mostly dry at first. Temperatures will start to come up 19 degrees on Tuesday, maybe the low 20s by Wednesday and Thursday, but cooler, more unsettled towards the end of the week.
Well, I'll be back in half an hour, but you can keep up to date with what's happening in London on BBC Radio London. Our website also has lots of information about where you can watch today's events if you're not in central London, and more on those road closures. That's bbc.co.uk/London. But for now, let's cross back to Sally and John in Westminster.
Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent. It is Monday, it's the 19th of September. We're at Westminster Abbey on an historic day, a day the likes of which we haven't seen for more than 70 years.
Queen Elizabeth II, the United Kingdom's longest reigning monarch, will be laid to rest. And earlier this morning, the final mourners paid their respects as she lay in state in Westminster Hall, just a short distance from here. At precisely 10:44 this morning, her coffin will then be taken on a gun carriage towed by 142 Royal Navy sailors and make its way here to Westminster Abbey.
The state funeral service will start here at exactly 11 o'clock. Afterwards, thousands will line the route of a procession along Whitehall, onto the Mall and past Buckingham Palace before making the journey in the state hearse to Windsor, where the Queen will be buried alongside her husband, Prince Philip. Our royal correspondent Daniela Relf looks ahead now to a momentous day.
This is a previously unseen photo of the Queen, taken at Windsor in May and released by Buckingham Palace for today. She is wearing aquamarine clip brooches given to her on her 18th birthday by her father. Today the country, over which she reigned for 7 decades, says its final goodbye. It has been a week of vigils and insights into a family's private grief. We have watched a new King and Queen consort meeting the crowds who came out to greet them. Seen a new Prince and Princess of Wales take on new titles and hear people's memories of the Queen. And shared the sadness of the younger members of the royal family as they paid tribute to their beloved grandmother. And 2 of the Queen's great-grandchildren will walk behind her coffin today in Westminster Abbey. 9-year-old Prince George and 7-year-old Princess Charlotte will form part of the funeral procession. They will walk behind their parents and in front of their aunt and uncle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It will be a moment of extraordinary solemnity for these 2 young royal children. The funeral service in Westminster Abbey will include Psalm 23. "The Lord's My Shepherd," sung in the Abbey at the wedding of the Queen and Prince Philip. Prayers will reflect the Queen's long life and reign and her devotion to duty. The service ends with the last post, a 2-minute silence and the national anthem, before the Queen's piper plays the traditional lament, "Sleep, dearie, sleep."
I think we need to recollect this is a state funeral. So this really is something that is intended to be seen. It's very visual. It's also intended to be heard. I think one of the things we are trying to do is to take all that emotion, all that interest, all that care that we can see in the queue for the lying in state, that we can see in the parks where people are laying flowers, and feel that we have managed in the Abbey to provide a focus for that. We've put it into words, we've given the grief somewhere to go.
The guest list will see a congregation of Prime Ministers and Presidents, of Kings and Queens, many of whom met King Charles at Buckingham Palace last night. They will attend the funeral alongside many charity workers and campaigners also invited.
I didn't expect out of the 2,000 people that were going to be this chap from Glasgow coming down to be part of it as a recipient of an MBE. It's quite an honour.
Few of us will have experienced anything like what we'll see at Westminster Abbey. The pomp, the grandeur, the scale will be memorable. But when the funeral procession moves from here to Windsor, events become smaller, more intimate, and eventually private. The committal service will be in St George's Chapel in Windsor, where the Queen worshipped so often. The Dean of Windsor will describe her calm and dignified presence in a rapidly changing and frequently troubled world. Then this evening, in a private service for the family only, the Queen will be buried alongside her husband. It will be a deeply personal ceremony. In a statement on this momentous day for the royal family, King Charles said, "As we all prepare to say our last farewell, I wanted simply to take this opportunity to say thank you to all those countless people who have been such a support and comfort to my family and myself in this time of grief." Daniela Ralph, BBC News, Westminster Abbey.
It is a day the likes of which most of us have simply never seen.
Indeed. Well, we're joined now by our BBC Royal correspondent Sarah Campbell. Good morning, Sarah. The last 11 days we've seen such powerful moments, haven't we, all over the UK, but today is when this chapter in our history ends.
Yeah, and it has been a real journey, I think, over the last 11 days, from those first images of the coffin leaving through the gates of Balmoral, that sort of beautiful, tranquil, peaceful, private place, of course, the place that she died on Thursday, the 8th of September, and then the journey through the Scottish Glens to the Scottish capital, the laying at rest there, and then the flight down to RAF Northolt, the drive through the rain, people standing on the roads, getting out of their cars to watch as that state hearse went by, the final night in Buckingham Palace, and then being brought to Westminster Hall, where hundreds of thousands of people have travelled the length and breadth of the country and beyond to come and just spend a few moments with her. And then today that final journey begins. Firstly, the short journey from Westminster Hall to here, Westminster Abbey, a place that has been the backdrop to so many key events in her life, key engagements. Of course, she was married here in 1947, she was crowned here in 1953, and today she will be, her funeral service will be held here.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. That's Sarah Campbell, our royal correspondent.
Around 2,000 people will be paying their final respects to the Queen, actually inside Westminster Abbey for the funeral service a bit later this morning.
Now, among the heads of state and dignitaries in attendance, a number of people recognised by the Queen in her birthday honours list have also been invited. John Maguire is at Westminster Hall for us with some of those guests. Morning, John.
Yeah, morning to you, Sally and John. The people that have been invited, as you say, feel, I think, excited, privileged to be attending today's funeral. Perhaps it's not the royal event they might have chosen, but it's one I know that they very much have been telling us they feel honoured to represent their organisations. Joined by two of them now, by Barbara Crellin and by Natalie Kairosh. Good morning to the two of you. The service will take place later on this morning. Perhaps tell us firstly, Natalie, your story in as much as you received the MBE, you both received the MBE, and why you're invited along today.
Yeah, so back in 2016 I was the victim of a multiple stabbing and I shouldn't have been here, and I think that changed my life around and made me realise I wanted to do something positive. So I actually work with young people talking about the reality of knife crime, what it's like to be a stab victim, to try and make them realise the implications of carrying a knife. And I work with vulnerable young people as well, helping them overcome trauma and lead their lives in a positive way and try and give them the best chance of the best life they can have.
So what does it mean for your work to be recognised, firstly by the MBE and then of course with your invitation today?
Yeah, do you know what, I thought I couldn't be made speechless anymore after the MBE, to be honest, and to then get that phone call from the Cabinet Office to say we'd like to invite you to the state funeral of Her Majesty the Queen. I think I was kind of totally speechless, which anyone knows me, that's very rare. So it's just an incredible honour. I think it reflects Her Majesty because she wanted always to be in touch with her people, and even on her final moments she's made sure that her people are here represented. It's not just heads of state, it's not just royalty, and I think that's really special. It really reflects our Queen, who will be really, really massively missed.
Yeah, I think you'll be an important part of today, and everybody will celebrate the fact that you've been invited along. Barbara, tell us your background.
My background is I'm a retired head teacher, and when I retired, there was a young guy I taught when he was about 6 or 7, was setting up a local community responder group. So I joined him to help him with the admin, really, and suddenly I found myself responding. So I've been doing that for 10 years, making a difference, trying to make a difference in people's lives. I'm also involved in several charities locally, and very heavily involved in sport, getting children involved particularly, but I'm also heavily involved in my local rugby club, which is Oakham, and I've been president of Leicestershire Rugby Union for 3 years. So I just like to be busy, I like to be making a difference, and as Natalie said, getting the MBE was a moment. Getting that phone call a week on Saturday was just totally, in fact I thought, why are they ringing on a Saturday lunchtime when the Queen's just died to arrange the investiture? Because that's what I thought it was with the Cabinet Office.
Right, okay.
And then when they said that, speechless wasn't the word. It wasn't the word. I just cried and cried. Found my husband, and he thought somebody had hurt me or I was injured. And it was just unbelievable. I just felt so humbled. Silly, I said, oh, I'm in Spain, but I've obviously cancelled that and I'm here today. So I'm just so humbled, so privileged and so honoured to be here.
It will be a moving, a poignant and emotive service today. Have you allowed any time to think what this morning, this afternoon might be like?
I think it's going to be very emotional. It's quite a poignant day for me anyway, because it's 37 years today since I lost my mother. Right. So it's a doubly emotional day because it doesn't make any difference. 37 years, 7 years, 3 years, it doesn't make any difference. I just don't know how I'm going to cope. I don't cope easily with funerals and things anyway. But as I say, it's just a moment in my life that I will never ever forget.
Okay. Natalie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo that, it is a really moving. I will cry as well, don't worry. That'll be both of us.
You won't be alone.
And I remember I did say that to the Cabinet Office when they called, and this gentleman I could hear go, oh. And I went, don't worry, I'll do it very dignified and very quietly. But it's like losing a grandmother, which I know a lot of people have said, and it is like losing a family member. She's always been there, and it is going to be very, very emotional moment.
Will be.
For both of us.
Well, I can see you offering each other mutual support already, and I know that there will be many other people at the service later on that will be prepared to do that, and you'll be able to offer support back to them. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Great pleasure to talk to you on BBC Breakfast this morning.
Thank you.
So there we are, John and Sally. We've heard it, I know, time and time again over the last few days, but it bears repetition, doesn't it? People coming for their own personal reasons, but primarily, whatever it might be, they're here because they want to pay those final respects, to say farewell to Her Majesty the Queen on her final journey. And we're just hours away from that now. So many people have told us over the last few days, haven't they, that they've, in their thoughts, have been their mothers and their grandmothers, sometimes their great-grandmothers. Well, the Queen has been that to so many of us, hasn't she? So today will be, I think, a fitting farewell. Back to you two.
John Maguire, thank you so much. And isn't it lovely to see those two ladies there saying they're actually looking after each other? I think lots of people will be doing that today.
And coming here for their own families, for their friends, for their work colleagues that are representing their entire communities here at Westminster Abbey. It's a good thing that the weather looks like it's going to be favourable today. It's been a bit miserable at times over the last few days, and it is autumn here in the UK, but the wind has dropped. It's quite a still and peaceful morning. The Union flag on top of the Abbey just hanging loosely there as the sun rises and dawn breaks in central London.
Well, following the funeral service here at the Abbey, the Queen's coffin is going to be drawn in a walking procession from the Abbey to Wellington Arch before embarking on its final journey, which of course is all the way to Windsor.
And during the procession, Her Majesty's coffin will file past the cenotaph in Whitehall, a place where we often would see her laying a wreath at Remembrance Sunday. And our correspondent Nick Beak is there because, Nick, we're expecting a lot of crowds there today, including many former soldiers and members of the armed forces. Good morning.
Good morning once again, John. Absolutely. I mean, look at the scenes here. Hundreds of people are on Whitehall this morning. You can see the number of police, more than 10,000 police officers. This spontaneous applause reflects the mood, really. Every now and then they're playing classical music as well. So although later on today it will be a moment of great solemnity, at the moment people are chatting. And let me just introduce you to a few people who've been gathering here, because to reflect the composition of the crowd, we've got people from the United States, from Australia, Ascot, not too far away, also Mexico. Leah, if I talk to you first of all, you're from Australia.
Correct.
When you think about the moment the Queen's coffin will pass by later today, what do you think will be going through your mind?
I mean, I already feel completely emotional. I mean, after 10 hours of, we got our wristbands, we were went and saw her lying in state. It's going to be an emotional day.
You made the time to see the lying in state?
Yeah, we did. Got there 2:30 yesterday and then got in about 11:30 last night. Went home for an hour and back here. So yeah, it's amazing.
And Catherine from Canada, from Montreal, if I just talk to you, you came for just a few days because you wanted to be here.
Yeah, I arrived yesterday morning, went straight into the queue, and then after I got here, so I'm taking back the plane tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So.
And the impact the Queen had on the Commonwealth and the wider world, from your point of view, what will you be thinking as you see her for the last time?
Well, I think all she did for, she gave 70 years of her life, so it was not a big deal to come and wait for 10 hours. Yeah.
Jennifer, you're from Ascot, so the Queen in a way was a neighbour of yours when she was certainly in Windsor.
That's how we feel. She's resided in Windsor now for so long with COVID coming over, and we like to see her. Not always out in the town, but obviously if there's any big event, with Ascot being a small place, Windsor being a small place, they actually fill it so quickly, and there's a fantastic atmosphere there. And I know when she goes back there today to be at the final resting place, that there'll be absolutely hundreds and thousands of people over there.
Yeah.
We've seen some extraordinary moments over the past 10 days or so, but for a lot of people this feels like finality, really.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very much so. This is the last day now.
Yeah.
And I think it's starting to sink in.
Yeah, it will take some time.
It's going to take some time, to not see her, on the news so much and what's going on and everything. She was the one who held everybody solid. And this is our final farewell.
Yeah.
Clearly there's been so much coverage on the television. You've been able to see lots of events. Why here, though? Why have you been waiting for hours overnight in the cold?
It's not the same watching it on the television. You don't get that feeling of what people are thinking. And I mean, today already the atmosphere is building up.
Yeah.
And it gives you part of you're helping her onto her next journey.
That's a very nice way to
Something
put it.
to remember. We've all met each other just today as well. Like, you know, yesterday.
We're all friends together now.
Yeah, exactly.
You're certainly friends together, and thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, just a few people in the hundreds strong crowd now, and more people are arriving here every moment.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Now, across the UK, communities are coming together to mark the Queen's funeral and, of course, pay their respects to the late monarch.
And Jane McCubbin is at the Royal British Legion Club in Staffordshire for us this morning, where people are gathering. Good morning to you, Jane. How are people marking this day?
Good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I mean, take a look around. We're in the Royal British Legion in Alrobos. We've got babies, 7-month-old Blue here, the youngest person here. We've got cubs and scouts and beavers and families, mums, dads, grandparents, great-grandparents like Marlene and Maureen there. We've got servicemen and women as well. The whole community has come together today because they want to share this moment, not on their own at home, but together as one community. And time will stand still at 11 o'clock when the funeral comes on. And this community has come together on many occasions in the past, every single Jubilee. So this is going to be very special for everybody here today. I want to introduce now Reverend John Allen. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jane.
That sense of being together is so important for you, isn't it?
It is, as human beings, as a community, and we're here today joining the country out of deep love and respect and admiration for a Queen who served all of us her whole life. And now it's our turn to say thank you to God and thank you to her and her family.
A message went out, didn't it, around the community saying if you know of any elderly neighbours who are on their own, bring them down today.
And I think many people have, along with our young folks. There's folks here from every part of the community, every organisation, and every strand of age, and that's wonderful. What a tribute.
It is. And the tone, do you think it will be one of solemnity or celebration?
I think it's got to be both, because although there's a deep sadness in all of our lives that we don't have Queen Elizabeth as part of our daily life anymore and as our sovereign, on the other hand, she's touched us so deeply with her love, her infectious smile, her faith in God, and she lived those values, and that's part of what we are now.
Thank you. Come and meet some of the servicemen. Paul and Brian, for you, I've spoken to so many people this week who've said she was our boss, she was our gaffer, and it feels personal, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, it really does. For me, she was the Colonel-in-Chief of my regiment, the Queen's Royal Lancers. She was well respected. You know, we thought the world of her.
When I spoke to you earlier, you did have tears in your eyes. You were.
Yeah, it's quite an emotional day for everybody within the regiment, I think.
Yeah, you feel the same, don't you?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
The first time I paraded for the Queen was in Silver Jubilee, at Wembley Pageant and on Horse Guards Parade.
You were a 17-year-old.
I was 17 years old, yeah. My very first parade in the Regimental Corps of Drums of Staffordshire Regiment.
So you're all together today and you can see everybody here. Such an outpouring of respect here that the place really is full. They've been up since 5 a.m, would you believe it, making cakes and getting refreshments ready because this is a community that really wants to be together. Let me introduce Amy now. You can see everybody resplendent in their uniforms this morning. Let me introduce Amy, who's here with the guides.
Yeah, I'm representing Orioles Girl Guiding. Obviously, out of respect for the Queen, it's the last chance today for us to be able to take our promise, as she's been our patron since 1951. So it's just quite an emotional day for us all, especially since you've been in Girl Guiding since 4 years old. It is really, really hard to think that our promise is changing.
Your promise is changing because from tomorrow on,
it will no longer be the Queen, it will be the King. And we will serve the King as we have the Queen.
Can you give us those words?
I promise that I will do my best to be true to myself and develop my beliefs, to serve my Queen and my community and to help other people to keep the guide law.
And those words mean a lot.
They do mean a lot, especially as she's just been so supportive and everything throughout the Girl Guiding Association, which is really, really good, and especially as we're helping young girls.
Thank you so much for your time, Amy. Thank you so much. This will become the most watched moment in television history, and there are people up and down the country and all over the world, very many millions of people who will watch a TV screen because they can't be there in person and take this moment in. It's going to be one moment that everybody up and down the country and around the world will remember for the rest of their lives. Back to you.
Absolutely, Jane. Thank you very much indeed, and to all the people there. It's going to be such a difficult day for so many people, isn't it? But wherever you're watching this morning, whether you're with other people, whether you're watching it alone, BBC Breakfast and the BBC generally here to guide you through the coverage of the next few hours.
Isn't it brilliant to see everybody looking after each other and being kind?
In the crowds as well. Noticed that I was walking through the Royal Parks last night, and people, strangers who had come alone, but who were making friends and just chatting and supporting one another. Yeah, lovely.
Now, for more than 40 years, the Royal Yacht Britannia served the royal family, travelling more than 1 million nautical miles around the globe for state visits, official receptions, honeymoons and holidays.
It was decommissioned in 1997, but the Queen described it always as somewhere that she loved, where she could truly relax, she said.
Now, our Scotland correspondent Lorna Gordon joins us now aboard Britannia. Lorna, what is the atmosphere like there this morning?
Good morning from the Royal Yacht Britannia. It's sombre here, it's subdued, it is reflective. You see behind me the ship's bell. That's the only place where the name of Britannia is marked. And we have one of the former members of staff, it's known as a yachty, with us now. Jeff Hughes, you were the chief cook.
I was one of the chief cooks on here,
Britannia.
Yeah.
What was it like when the Queen was on board?
It was brilliant because it was a home from home for the Queen. It was a place where she could relax and enjoy herself without the pressure of the media or the public here, and she was very relaxed all the time on here.
You got a sense of how fond she was when you saw how visibly emotional she was when the ship was decommissioned. She looked as if she was holding back her tears.
Yeah, it was another sad day. It was, I must say, Her Majesty the Queen and all of us had tears in our eyes that day. That was a really sad day for the decommissioning, because the yacht has done so much for the British, and especially with the Queen on board.
Yes, it's interesting. We've seen so much over the last few days, this mixture of a family grieving in private and also ceremony, and in a very different way. You saw the family relaxing, but also this was a place of ceremony, of occasion, of a state place as well.
Yeah, well, I must say, they're all yachtsmen. We were a family. Although we were all Royal Navy, we were still a family, and the Royal Family made us feel a family. The Queen was brilliant. She would come on board on a tour, and if she was on for any length of time, she would actually come and meet all the members of the crew. It would be official walk round, and she would actually meet everybody, and they made you relaxed and easy to talk to. The very first time I met them, I was a bit apprehensive, but once they started talking to you, it was easy, and the conversation would go, they'd ask you questions, you answered, and it was good.
Did she have a favourite part of the ship?
Well, the sun lounge here was her favourite part of the ship, and you can imagine sitting in there and you're at sea somewhere, sunny or stormy morning, and looking out the back and the view you have. So no wonder it's a favourite place, but that was one of my favourite places.
And of course the royal family played games on the deck here as well.
Yeah, this was their part of the ship. When they were on board, any work that was done aft of midships was done before 9 o'clock in the morning. And there was no word of command given. Everything was done in silence because everybody knew their job. And then after 9 o'clock, this part of the ship was the royal part. They could relax, play their games and do whatever. But also, when we used to have our own part of the ship on the forecastle, if we were playing deck hockey, volleyball, the royal family and the Queen, they would come on the Royal Bridge and they'd watch us. So you had both ends of the spectrum there, so it was good.
And of your many meetings with the Queen, which ones stand out?
Oh, there's quite a few, but I think one of the best is when we stirred in the Christmas pudding. That was brilliant because it was the senior naval officer on board. It was tradition would stir the Christmas ceremonial stirring of the Christmas pudding, and the actual day when you seen the photograph that we were doing it, as we were pouring the alcohol and rum in, the Duke says, "Make sure it all goes in, Chief." And then the Queen just burst out laughing, which you see on the photograph, and it's brilliant, you know. And we used to do ship's concerts for them as well, and to see the Queen and the rest of the royal family sitting down there, relaxed, with no pressure, and actually laughing when a tear is coming down their faces.
And you had a private audience as well, didn't
yes,
you?
I was lucky enough just before the last trip I done on the Royal Yacht with Her Majesty the Queen. I had a private audience about 10 minutes with herself and Prince Philip, and she asked me about my time on the yacht, what I intended to try and do when I was going outside, what my family was like, and it was brilliant. It really was.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much for that. And to play us out, we have piper Stephen Dewar. He's going to play one of the Queen's favourite piping songs. It's Flowers of the Forest.
Seen live from Her Majesty's yacht, Britannia, this morning.
Wonderful sounds, some wonderful stories there. Now for viewers in the UK, it's time to get the news, the travel and the weather where you are this morning.
Good morning from BBC London, I'm Thomas McGill. More than 10,000 police officers from every force across the UK will be deployed in London later for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. An estimated 1 million spectators are expected in London for the event. Around 2,300 officers will line the route of the Queen's final journey from Westminster Abbey to Windsor Castle in what the Met have described as the final and most complex phase of the operation following the Queen's death. Well, today's events will also mean the capital's transport network could face its busiest day ever if bosses warn that it could be overwhelmed if too many people start to head home once the procession leaves Westminster. With more on that, here's our transport correspondent Tom Edwards.
Central London is expecting unprecedented numbers today. There will be lots and lots of road closures. Also, the tube is going to run an hour later, although St James's Park, Hyde Park Corner and Westminster are not going to be open. Also, Green Park is going to be exit only. What TfL are worried about is there will be a huge rush of people after the funeral and they'll all rush to the tubes and that will cause problems. They're asking people to stagger their journeys, but it is a big day for Transport for London.
Well, let's see how the tube is looking at this time of this morning, and there's a part suspension on the Elizabeth line, but other than that there's a good service on all other lines. Let's take a look now at the weather, and it'll be a largely dry day with a small chance of some scattered showers in West London and Windsor with the top temperature of 18 degrees. That's it from me this morning. You can keep up to date with what's happening on BBC Radio London, and we'll have a special programme at 5:50 this evening. But for now, it's back to Sally and John at Westminster Abbey.
Good morning. You're watching Breakfast on BBC News with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
Hello, we're live in Westminster ahead of the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, the UK's longest reigning monarch. And that service takes place here at Westminster Abbey at 11 o'clock this morning.
The crowds are gathering across central London, lining the procession route the Queen's coffin will take before she makes her final journey to Windsor this afternoon.
And it's there that she'll be laid to rest beside her husband, the late Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, let's take a look now at how the events of today will unfold. At 10:44, the Queen's coffin will be moved from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey, a short distance away, where the funeral service will be held. The Royal Navy's state gun carriage will bear the coffin, drawn by 142 sailors. Senior members of the royal family, including the King and his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, will walk just behind in the procession. At 11 o'clock, the Queen's funeral will begin in Westminster Abbey. 2,000 guests are expected to attend. Towards the end of the funeral service, the last post, a short bugle call, will be played, followed by a 2-minute national silence. After the funeral ceremony, the Queen's coffin will be taken in a procession to Wellington Arch at Hyde Park Corner. The procession will be led by members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the route will be lined by members of the armed forces. The King will lead members of the royal family walking in the procession. The coffin will then be taken by state hearse to Windsor. At 4 p.m, there'll be a committal service in St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle with a small congregation, including the royal family. This service will also be televised. Well, here at the Abbey this morning, we're joined by the broadcaster and author Giles Brandreth, who knew the Queen, of course, was a very good friend of her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. Good morning. So the day is upon us.
The day is upon us, and it's such a privilege to be here at Westminster Abbey, the scene of so much of our royal history, from the coronation of William the Conqueror onwards, and the scene, too, of so much of the Queen's own life. Her parents were married here back in 1923, when famously the Queen's mother, when she left her bouquet spontaneously on the tomb of the unknown warrior. And then, of course, in 1947, this is where the Queen married Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten, the Duke of Edinburgh. And I came across last night the letter that George VI, the Queen's father, sent to her the day after the wedding. She was 21 years of age, and her father meant the world to her, as we're reminded of today in that photograph that's just been issued of her wearing that brooch, that picture of her father. And this is George VI writing to Princess Elizabeth the day after her wedding. I was so proud of you and thrilled at having you so close to me on our long walk in Westminster Abbey. But when I handed your hand to the Archbishop, I felt that I had lost something very precious. You were so calm and composed during the service and said your words with such conviction that I knew everything was all right. And thinking about today, we feel that we have lost something very precious, and yet somehow everything is going to be all right.
What lovely words.
Well,
this morning to hear those. Yeah.
Her relationship with her father was central to her life, and he died in 1952, only in his 50s. And, people of my generation, we don't really remember him. And yet the Queen always remembered him. On the anniversary of his death, which was the anniversary of his accession, she usually did something involving going to a cancer hospital of some kind. She remembered him always. And given her faith, given the strands, the threads that were her life, service, duty, faith and family, they all come together today. Faith and family. So she is to be reunited with her father, with her mother, with her sister, and with her husband. Today begins here, but it ends privately in the chapel that she had built in 1962 in memory of her father, the King George VI Chapel at Windsor. And there she will be laid to rest alongside her parents and alongside her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh.
And Giles, standing here, as we are right in front of the Abbey, surrounded by hundreds of people, broadcasters from around the world, dozens of photographers, it's busy, isn't it? It's like the business end of this is happening all around us, but what you've done there is you've reminded us that this is essentially at the heart of it, a family day.
What was fascinating about the Queen's life is it was both a public life and a private life, and the two come together. And members of the royal family accept that. They know that duty and service are part of those strands. They're part of the thread of royalty. That's what it's always been. The history of this place is public events. This is a public funeral, but it will end with a private service after the committal, where the children lay their mother, the grandchildren their grandmother to rest. But she is going, in her belief, to a better place. And that, for her, after 96, we are, of course, mourning the loss of a very special person in all our lives, but we're also honouring 96 years of extraordinary achievement that is recognised across the world. Leaders from across the world have come here. United States of America, the flags have been flown at half-mast as long as they have been in this country. This is a global event for a reason. And the reason is partly our heritage and our history, but partly too the person that we are honouring and celebrating today as we say goodbye.
And that family you were talking about, we're reporting this morning that two of the great-grandchildren, Prince George and his little sister, Princess Charlotte, they will follow the coffin into the Abbey here. Did that surprise you when you heard that?
Not really, because the Queen put everything in order before she died. Her final duties only 10 days ago, welcoming a new Prime Minister, her 15th, giving one of her staff an honour that day, and then seeing her horse win the 320 at Goodwood. Yes! What a way to go. And then 2 days later, she's gone after 96 years. But her life was being the Queen from the age of 21 onwards. So, this is what she knew from the moment she got married here, age 21. She becomes Queen age 25. This was her story. And the continuity is everything. And she said all this, in a sense, in a train, when, the Platinum Jubilee, telling us that it was her wish that Camilla would be known as the Queen Consort. Everything set in place and in order. And the accession of King Charles III, which has gone seamlessly, the new Prince of Wales, it feels natural. It's a strange way that we organise things in this country, but this Abbey began under the reign of King Edgar, King of the East Angles. And here we are, more than 1,000 years later, and somehow this continuity has, in its strange way, served the country well.
It will see us all out. Giles, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
It's 20 to 8 this morning, and Giles was just talking there about how today starts with this very public state funeral service here, but will end more privately for the family at Windsor. And Charlie is in Windsor for us this morning. Hi, Charlie.
Good morning to you, John. So, as you were hearing a moment ago, Windsor, where we are this morning, very much the final journey to the Queen's final resting place. You can see the castle behind me down the long walk, and I think probably we can take the camera from high above where we are this morning. That will give you a sense of what's happening here since we arrived 4 o'clock this morning. Many people already in situ. They'd camped out overnight. Let me give you a sense of what will be happening through the day. 3:10, we think the procession will begin here. They will proceed past us here all the way up to the castle itself. Members of the royal family will be there awaiting the hearse as it arrives, and then the committal service will take place. We think around 800 people. These are including people from all over the Commonwealth, world leaders as well as members of the royal household. And then later, of course, at around 7:30 this evening, the very private part of the ceremony, where the Queen will be laid to rest alongside her beloved husband, Prince Philip. Now, Windsor Park has been for many, many years a very special place for the Queen. Let's show you a little bit of that story. It's a road the Queen has travelled many times before, so often accompanied by her late husband, Prince Philip. The 3-mile avenue runs through Windsor Great Park, whose grounds offered welcome freedom for the young royal family to play. Where once Her Majesty had learned to ride with her sister. A place for pomp and ceremony, as well as public gatherings. The Long Walk has welcomed everyone, from presidents to Boy Scouts. A feature designed for processions, it's been a scene of joy. From milestone birthdays for the monarch to historic Jubilee celebrations. But it's seen sadness too. Last year, crowds lined the route for the funeral cortege of the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen's husband of 73 years. And today, mourners will once again gather on the Long Walk as Her Majesty makes her final journey to be buried alongside the man she called her strength and stay. So interesting hearing people's stories as to why they wanted to be here today. Let's chat to a few people who've been here. David, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What's your reason for being here today?
A moment of history, I think. When the Queen died, I think you get a personal grief coming through from your own experiences, I think. And last night, seeing the BBC's coverage, we decided to spur of the moment to come down.
And your thoughts, you were telling me, very much linked to your own family, your great-grandfather and stories.
Yes. He as a young boy, remembered the Queen Victoria dying in the funeral, and what a big thing it was. I think he was about 8 at the time, and it's passed that on to me. I was living with him as a kid, so I think it's him going through the First World War as well, and these stories he used to tell. He was my hero, I suppose.
And so you're very much here for him as well?
Many years later, yes. I think that touched me, yeah.
A lot of people are saying that. Thank you so much. Good morning. What's your name?
Christine.
Christine, tell us why you wanted to be here.
I'm a staunch royalist. My mother was born near Sandringham. I had a great uncle that worked at Sandringham. And I've followed all the royals, mainly the Queen. And this is my 4th day of, coming along to all the things that were...
And what will be your emotions today? You're in a very special place here, and this very much the final journey.
Yes, I wanted to be here for the final journey. I wanted to say goodbye. I went to the laying in state, but I just felt I wanted to see her go through those gates and say goodbye to her, because she has been the main one that I wanted to follow. And I've been to her 25th, her 50th, her 60th, her 70th. And I just wanted to say goodbye.
There are lots of mixed emotions here, aren't there? Because there's lots of celebration. Now, good morning to you.
Hello.
Your name is?
Joanna.
Joanna, you have some extraordinary stories. Would you share a little bit? This is to do with your father and his role in the military.
Yes. My father was commander of the Red Devils. He was in the parachute regiment. He started off as an Olympic gymnast and then went on to be commander of the Red Devils, and he used to fly the plane as well because he learnt to be a pilot. He had a lot to do with the royal family. He was very friendly with King Charles.
And you were saying that he, at one point, or many times, parachuted into Buckingham Palace.
Yes, on the green, on the front. And often the Queen would invite him for tea. So, very proud. My father got his MBE at Buckingham Palace. I went along and was introduced to the Queen there, and I also was invited to the garden party which I attended.
Tell us a little bit about your emotions today, because clearly given the connection, the family connection, what will be your thoughts as the procession comes past just after 3 o'clock this afternoon?
Very proud to have her as our Queen. Everything that she's given to the country and everything she's given to the people, and I think she'll be sadly missed. But hopefully my father will look after her when she's there, and and she will be looked after, and she'll be with her Prince Philip. So I think that's the most important thing.
One of the things that's been so lovely is how people have made friends along the way. People are chatting, aren't they? What's your name?
Karen.
Karen, what's your story? Why would you be here today?
I just could not. The Queen's been here for 70 years and it's just a pivotal moment in the life of the country. I don't think we'll ever be the same now that she's gone. So it's just, you just can't not be here, I don't think.
Thank you all so much for talking to us today. We are expecting some 150,000 people to line the route here today. It will be a remarkable occasion on the long walk. I just leave you with this last thought. We are told that on the marble slab, the Queen's marble slab, it will be simply engraved with Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022. Hand you back to John and Sally.
Charlie, thank you so much. Charlie in Windsor for BBC Breakfast this morning. I was really struck by that lady who said, I just couldn't not be here today. So many people have just felt compelled, haven't they, over the last few days to make the journey to London and to Windsor.
And you do sense, certainly coming through London this morning, you sense the crowds are building. Thousands of people expected to gather in the city today, lining the procession route the Queen's coffin is going to be taking.
And Charlotte Gallagher is on the Mall for us this morning, where many of those people are. And Charlotte, what's the mood like there, close to Buckingham Palace this morning?
It's really special, John. It's lovely, actually. Everyone chatting to each other, talking about their memories of the Queen. People have been camped here since Wednesday, some of them we've spoken to. They just were determined to be a part of history and say goodbye to the Queen. And what's been really humbling, I've seen, is veterans that have queued up to see lying in state. They've been on walking sticks, some of them, and they spent 14, 15 hours queuing to see their Commander-in-Chief. Let's speak to a couple of veterans that have come down here today. Jeff and Basil.
Hello.
Jeff, firstly, why did you want to be here?
Obviously, paying respects to the Queen. I've served in the Blues and Royals and the Household Cavalry.
Please refrain from
it's our way of saying goodbye to the boss.
As these will
known affectionately as the boss.
Of others. Thank you for your
assistance. I came here Friday night and been here ever since.
And what's it been like being here since Friday night? It's been a long wait for you.
It's good atmosphere. I had the tent, the camp bed and all the food and gas stoves and all that. So it's been a good atmosphere. So I've made a lot of friends down here.
Well, if anyone's going to be prepared, it's a former soldier. That's what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Basil, you were in the Blues and Royals as well.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
And you met the Queen, didn't you?
Yeah,
Can you tell
I met
me
the
about
Queen and the Queen Mother as well. So I used to work for the Queen Mother as well. So I was one of the house sergeants, or one of the house orderlies over at Clarence House. So this is my second royal funeral.
And what was that like, working for the royal family, meeting them up close?
Well, I mean, they're just like everybody else. I mean, you do your duties and that's it. I mean, what can I say really? They're you just do your job and that's it. The same as being in the army. I mean, I did 33 years, so she was my boss really.
And really special to you. You've been here since Friday as well.
No, I came last night.
Yeah, you came last night.
Me and Jeff, we've known each other since 1971 when we were in Cyprus. So we've known each other for 52 years nearly.
And is it nice being with such a good friend for this moment?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, just to pay respects. I've done the army and the Clarence House as well. So.
And Jeff, what do you think it's going to be like when, as you called her, the boss goes past?
Very sad, actually. All we've ever known is the Queen, and now we've suddenly got a king. It's quite a strange feeling, actually. It's been very upsetting, and I've been watching most of the footage on the television. I've been up here laying flowers with my sisters. My sister had done the line in state the other night, so we feel that our family have all done a bit for Her Majesty. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Jeff and Basil talking to us about why they wanted to come down here today. And I'm just going to share something with you that a police officer told me actually earlier. This is her 15th day in a row, and she said she would do anything for the Queen. She joined the army when she was 16 years old, and now she's a police officer, and she said she would have given anything to be here. It hasn't felt like work to her, it's felt like her duty.
Oh, Charlotte, thank you very much indeed. Charlotte Gallagher outside Buckingham Palace. All those uniforms tell a story as well, don't they? So Scouts uniforms, military uniforms. I even saw somebody in their jockey's outfit a little bit earlier, all of them tied to the life of Her Majesty the Queen.
Sarah's still with us. And as we reflect now, Sarah, on everything that we've seen so far this morning, let's look a little bit ahead to the ceremony itself, because we've heard more details about the service, haven't we?
Yes, indeed. So the service is due to start at 11 o'clock. Those doors there are due to open at 8. So all those world leaders, dignitaries, VIPs are going to make their way in. And we should say that many members of the public have been invited. Those who've won Victoria Crosses, George Crosses, and those that have really given themselves to the communities, given themselves to service, which of course was so important to the Queen. So they are going to make up the congregation as well. The royal family, of course, are going to play a key part. They will process behind the coffin. We've seen the children, we've seen the grandchildren do that. Today we will also see great-grandchildren. So Prince George, who's only 9, and Princess Charlotte, just 7, will be in the procession behind the coffin. Of course, they are now 2nd and 3rd in line to the throne, very aware that this is their life, their future life of public service. Lord Sentamu, just to give you an idea of what it's going to feel like this service, the former Archbishop of York said yesterday, the Queen does not and did not want a long, boring service. Instead, you're going to be lifted to glory as you hear it. So we're going to hear "The Lord is my shepherd." It will be sung as it was at the Queen's wedding here back in 1947. And at the end, there will be the last post, just near the end of the service, will be sounded by the state trumpeters of the Household Cavalry, and then that 2-minute silence will be observed here. Another chance, as it was last night, for people to stop and reflect and think of Her Majesty. That will bring the service to a close, and then things will move, of course, to Windsor and her final resting place.
And let's talk about Windsor, Sarah, because this is a day in 2 parts, isn't it? What will happen there at Windsor Castle later?
I think first of all the procession will be important because it will allow again thousands of people to watch as first through the streets of London, and then when it transfers into the state hearse, which we know the Queen had a hand in designing so that it was full of glass so that people could see her as much as possible as she went past. And as you say, it will travel to St George's Chapel first for a committal service at 4 o'clock, which will be, it's a smaller congregation, around 800 or so. These will be more personal connections, people who've worked with her in the Queen's households across the country, and there will be personal moments in that. And then finally, this evening, there will be the private burial, away from the cameras, a moment for the family themselves to say goodbye. And as we've been hearing, she will be laid to rest finally in the George VI Memorial Chapel, alongside her husband, late husband, Prince Philip, and with her family, so with her parents and with her younger sister, Margaret.
Sarah, thank you so much for your company this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, coverage of the Queen's funeral continues throughout the morning here on the BBC and on the BBC News website too, where there are full guides to every part of today, including the service and the processions.
Thank you so much for joining BBC Breakfast from Westminster Abbey this morning. It has been a real privilege, hasn't it, to be here as this day begins. And let's end this morning's programme looking at some images of Her Majesty throughout her 70-year reign.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family.
Still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.